Mike Erre here, coming at you from suburban Columbus, Ohio, where on April 9th, it is snowing. I felt the need to complain publicly about the weather simply because lament is a very biblical thing, and I realize that people are listening from all around the country and in other parts of the world too, and that it's not as awful in those places as it is here. But my complaining has become tedious even to myself. I simply will now suck it up and just accept that I am a Midwesterner and this is what the weather is like. And then protesting does nothing to change it. Even the weather forecast can't predict it. But it is snowing on April 9th, and this is the last comment I will make on the weather until maybe next week. So you can breathe a sigh of relief that is over. Welcome to the podcast. If you are a new podcast listener, we've been going on a couple of years now, and just have this wonderfully glorious and diverse community that's grown up around our little endeavor. And one of the things that I love about it is we get tons of feedback, tons of support, tons of critique, and all of that is good and wonderful. What I want to do the next, I don't know, maybe couple of podcasts, unless something major kind of interrupts the flow. I want to talk a little bit about narcissism and its current place in American evangelicalism. And I speak as one who I'm learning is maybe a bit familiar with the topic, and it is ironic just out of the gate. It's like complaining about social media on social media. Like talking about narcissism when you're sitting in a room by yourself, thinking that people are going to hear your thoughts on narcissism is narcissistic. And so I totally grant that irony, and I don't know what to do about it other than just to press forward with awareness. Now, narcissism, at least from my little bit of research, comes from this Greek myth about Narcissus, who was a hunter. He was as a boy, his face was unbelievably beautiful. I can totally relate to this. When he was 16, I think the myth goes like this. When he was 16, or he was a young man, he walked along the mythical river Styx, and stopped to drink water, evidently, and saw his self-reflection in the water, and what he saw transfixed him. I don't know if he knew it was himself, but what he saw was just absolutely incredible. And so he fell in love with the image of himself. And because he fell in love with the image of himself, I almost knocked the microphone over. He was incapable of loving others or being loved by others. And so he could not leave his reflection. And so he kind of laid down by the pool and eventually became the flower Narcissus. The earth kind of swallowed him up. And so the word narcissist came to mean a person who is has a fixation on themselves or with themselves. A guy named Charles Stone, working with some of the intellectual work of a guy named Peter Steinke, has done some writing about this, and very, very fascinating stuff. Narcissists are tough to identify because they often exude qualities that are lauded in American culture: self-confidence, magnetic personality, strong skills on like a speaking platform, the ability to motivate others. It's widely believed, this is another author, that narcissists are easy to spot because they act in such self-serving ways. However, the opposite is true. They are not easy to spot. They tend to be very well thought of by the majority of people. That's what the goal of their narcissism is. Generally, they are highly respected and among the most loved of leaders. It is very important to narcissists that others view them in ways that are consistent with their inflated self-image. Now, this is going to be a really, really big deal here in a second. Generally, the true narcissist works hard to win admiration and becomes very good at it. The dysfunctional elements of narcissism are not seen until you look into their very closest relationships. Narcissists are unable to build intimate relationships because they demand that everything focus on serving the narcissist instead of relationships that are mutually loving and giving, bringing out the best in both parties. For the narcissist, the only priority is that they are being served. The general success in creating a favorable impression makes the narcissistic element among evangelical leadership extremely influential. They are the most loved preachers at the largest churches, commonly quoted authors of the best-selling books. Narcissists generally put more energy into building their church or advancing their ministries, not because they want to impact the lives of people for Jesus, although that will be their claim, but rather because of their intense need for recognition and celebrity. And so this poses, I think, a very interesting dynamic in much of modern Western Christianity, at least in my subculture, my tribe. Because we do have all of these celebrity pastors, tons of mega churches, lots of people on bestseller lists, lots of bloggers and social media folks that have huge platforms. I mean, literally, we're just the evangelical landscape is just rife with all sorts of platforms, including this one. And so I thought it would be an interesting conversation. Because I was reading an article. And it was signs that you might be narcissistic. So I started reading this thing and went, "Oh my goodness! Perhaps there's more narcissism in me than I had originally thought." And so I started doing some digging, and just went, "Oh wow, this is a thing." So I want to talk first about, and again, I'm no therapist at all. I've been in therapy twice. But I want to talk about just kind of a general, really oversimplified understanding of kind of what causes this sort of preoccupation with self. And I'm going to do it in therapeutic language that I'm just borrowing from, the reading and study that I've done. But the thing is, it resonates with me, and it resonates with a lot of stories I hear about people leading kind of people leading churches. So I want to talk about in this show just what narcissism is and the signs of it, at least written by some. And then I want to talk about next podcast. I want to talk about why is it so prevalent in the way we understand church, the way American evangelicalism understands church. What is it about that understanding of church and ministry? What is it about that attracts people like us into leadership? So a couple of like background thoughts from a very high level. And again, I'm not a therapist at all, but these thoughts seem to make sense to me, so I don't claim any authority on them, but this certainly is an oversimplified understanding of a bunch of stuff I've read. So there seems to be a general consensus that the narcissistic personality is formed when there is some sort of damage or trauma to the self-image of someone during their formative years. And that can be any number of things. It's just, it has the effect of damaging self-image. And the wound that is then created is really built around shame and core insecurity. That somehow I'm not a person that is lovable. I'm not a person that is admirable. I'm not a person that is respectable. There's something deeply flawed by me. And because of that, I'm jealous. or threatened by others who are, more special than me, more athletic than me, more influential than me. I'm jealous of other people's success. I can't celebrate the success of other people. But that fundamental wound and the shame that comes with it, the insecurity that comes with it, leads to a deep, compulsive craving to feel important and significant. That's kind of the big point. So your self-image is damaged, and then all of a sudden you have this deep need to have your self-image reconstructed, and you do that by this compulsive desire to feel important and significant. And I so resonate with this. I mean, one of my earliest memories was Luke Skywalker in the first Star Wars, the original Star Wars, looking out at the twin suns of Tatooine while the John Williams music, his musical score just kind of swells in the background. And you've just met Luke, and Luke is so unhappy. There's this big war going on between the rebellion and the Empire. And he's stuck in this backward planet, doing moisture farming, and he's got to sit through another season because his uncle won't let him go, and blah, 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 blah. He's yearning. He's always looking to the horizon. And there's this desire to participate in something important and something bigger than themselves. And I just remember I've always connected with that image. That image has always spoken to me. This kind of deep, deep longing to be important, to be significant, to be a part of something that deeply, deeply matters. And so I totally resonate with that image. A wound that is shame, that has shame around it and insecurity around it, the desire to feel important. And then the next move is, so you have the damage to the self-image, then you have this wound that is created. And the third move is that you create a false persona. And that persona can be very chameleon-like, meaning it can change depending on who you're around, or you can be any number of false personas. But the key is that the false persona and the maintenance of the false persona is how we cope with what one author says is ego deprivation. That whatever that damage was to our self-image, and the wound is that we carry with us now, that we create the false persona to be the things we're not. To be the respectable, admirable, praiseworthy person that our shame won't let us ever believe we deeply are. So we have to create this false persona. And the false persona can be anything. I mean, you can be nice and diplomatic, a conflict avoider. You can be fun and popular and well-liked and self-deprecating. You can be tough and austere and nothing ever gets you down and you can handle it all. You can be totally ambitious and yearn for success and use people along the way as long as they help you succeed. You can hide behind right theology or religious traditions, and as long as you're well known and important, because of your theological views and the self-acclaimed job you have to correct everybody else. I mean, all of these ways are ways of hiding. And the creation of the false persona and the hugely important point, at least for me, is that the false persona is created in order to meet the need to feel significant and important. And so what is then made after the creation of the false persona, it's a preoccupation. This is kind of the fourth step. It's a preoccupation with the self and reinforcement of the false persona by others. So you constantly need this persona propped up because deep down, even in the places we're not even conscious of, we know it's not true. And so to try to find validation of ego and image and so on, we prop up this false persona, and then we seek to have that validated by acting in certain ways that people applaud or approve of. And holy cow, I so resonate with that. And I hate admitting it, but I absolutely resonate with that journey. Absolutely. So this man, Charles Stone, lists, and again, he's basing it on other work too, but he lists some signs that you or someone might be narcissistic. And to some degree, psychologists argue that a small dose of narcissism is a good thing. I mean, to have boundaries, to have self-esteem, those sorts of things, to some degree, there is a bit of narcissism that infects all of us, and that is necessary for us to function in the world. And we've all been damaged in one way, and we all feel shame in one way. And so some of this is true of all of us to a degree. But the compulsive need for attention and approval, I think, is what sets true narcissists apart from the rest. So here's a list of, and if you'll forgive me, I'm just going to share some of my reaction to this list. And I'm doing it. Oh man, I'm doing it not because I believe everyone wants to hear my take on this, although I'm capable of that. I'm doing this because for me, there's a bit of confession here. And you can't talk about the Christian celebrity thing and critique it if I'm not willing to see the log in my own eye, so to speak. And so as the biggest sinner in the room, as I go through some of these really sting, and I go, oh my goodness. And my wife and I were reading them. And after a couple, she's like, she said, how does it feel to know, does it feel good to finally know, or to have a name for what it is that you struggle with, or whatever? I mean, it was like totally like, oh yeah, of course. So in no particular order, here are 10 or so symptoms, signs, markers perhaps that you're dealing with excessive levels of narcissism in somebody else or yourself. Number 1, rage. If this person experiences shame, for shame exposes their true self. So again, a lot of effort and energy is put into maintaining the false persona. And because there's so much effort putting on the maintaining of the false persona, anytime that false persona is exposed, there is a lot of anger given to that exposure. Because if you get back in touch with that wound, you realize that wound is defining, at least it seems that way, that wound is characteristic, and that wound isn't as pretty as the false persona you've worked so hard to maintain. So, a narcissist is hypersensitive to criticism. Why? Because of the criticism. If they see the criticism as valid at this deep, deep level, it gets them in touch with shame. Shame makes them feel exposed. And so very often narcissists will respond viciously and personally to disagreement or to attacks, or to any sort of like calling on the carpet conversation, because they'll feel exposed. That's number 1. Number 2, an inordinate need for praise in order to feel important. So my Luke Skywalker moment, and reflecting on it since, has I've seen in my own heart the desire to feel important, the desire to be praised, the desire to, because that gets me in touch with something that makes me feel like I'm in touch with something that's much bigger and more important than me. And the idea of just being average or normal is just anathema to us. And we'll get to why in a second, but there is, and again, we all need praise, and I can cover this up by saying, hey man, words of affirmation are my love language. But as I've been in Ohio and away from, a mega church culture, I've led several mega churches and even a church kind of startup where I've been seen as important or significant. And I've moved to Ohio, and there are a few people that I know, and there are a few people that kind of know what I've done in the past, but that is so, I mean, it's just, there's nothing that is satisfying my ego. There's no significant work. There's, it's been this death of like affirmation. And I've noticed how starved I am for it. Which is such a dangerous place to be. So I see this need for the need for praise in order to feel important. And the ironic thing is so much of the false persona it displays itself in an inflated ego. And so you're almost overcompensating for the ego damage you had somewhere, earlier, by having this inflated ego. But the way you get the inflated ego is because you're constantly maintaining a false self that is specifically designed to get praise from other people. And so narcissists have an inflated sense of self. They do not see themselves properly. So when Paul says, like in the book of Romans, do not think of yourselves more highly than you ought, that is impossible for narcissists, because we don't see ourselves truly in relationship to other people, to our wound, to our false persona. There's a sense in which if we're not sufficiently honored in my identity as a leader, it's very easy to become self-promoting, or to want to become self-promoting. And it's very easy to disguise wanting to build up the kingdom of God or wanting to build up my kingdom as wanting to build up the kingdom of God. Very easy to do that. And you see this with our preoccupation with numbers and platform and followers and likes. Those things aren't marks of impact in the kingdom. Those things are marks of, they're the bits of praise and bits of popularity and bits of recognition. And that's why we love them so much. So I remember, we're still on number 2. I remember my first kind of pastor in California, a guy named Kenton Beshore, at Mariners Church. I was an up-and-comer, baby. I was a college pastor, and I was beginning to speak more, and I realized I had this gift of speaking, and our college ministry was going well, and I was getting more and more recognition in the church. And we were talking one day. We were writing small group questions. They were called flow questions back in the day, about something. And I remember Kenton asked, "Hey, he asked me and another guy, he's like, well, what are the struggles of your heart?" And some of you've heard this story before, I know, but I was rifling through the standard pride, lust, whatever answers, kind of the normal answers. And Kenton, in that moment, sort of looked at me, and it was a prophetic moment for me, because he looked at me and he said, "No, you desire to have a great name, to make your name great." And oh my goodness, I just started weeping. I mean, this is not something I did a lot back in the day. I just started weeping because it was so true. Yes, I desperately wanted to have a great name. I wanted to be Luke Skywalker, and be involved in something that was super important and mattered, and I was contributing, all of those sorts of things. So I very much resonate with the inordinate need for praise in order to feel important. I even asked my wife, I married a wonderful young lady who is shown love through quality time and through acts of service. And I am shown love by physical touch and acts or words of praise. And so I will literally ask my wife, "Hey, what are 2 things you like about me?" Because she's not a big verbal affirmer. And I always thought, well, that's just me being, trying to receive love as a somebody whose love language is verbal encouragement. But now I realize, oh, no. I'm looking for somebody to prop up my false self, right? My persona. I got to find someone to prop that sucker up. I thought it was so good. I thought it was so amazing that I mean, not amazing in the good sense, but just kind of ridiculous that I would go around asking for that from my sweetie bear. Now, number 3, another huge favorite of mine, the feeling of entitlement to special treatment. And so let me read a little bit here. Narcissists hold unreasonable expectations of particularly favorite treatment and automatic compliance because they consider themselves special. So good. Failure to comply is considered an attack on their superiority, and the perpetrator is considered awkward or difficult person. Defiance of their will is a narcissistic injury that can trigger narcissistic rage. Narcissists often get really angry when they get exposed. And I remember feeling exposed once with my wife. I don't remember if we were in an elder meeting or what, but I remember I was trying to make a good impression. I cared about the impression I was making. My wife shared about something that we had fought about, and I came out looking really bad. And I remember how angry I was with her. It was almost like the curtain was pulled back, and here I am, this small, petty, immature kid in my marriage. And I remember I was so angry, and I did not connect it with kind of feeling exposed, but I do now. I mean, holy cow, that's exactly what happened. And I remember, like, yes, of course you and I know that I'm like this, but why do you have to share it with anybody else? Because it makes me look bad. It exposes the false self. So I can resonate with that. The feeling of entitlement. Oh my Lord. I went to therapy, and I don't know if this is interesting or not, but you see, there again, I care about what you think. So I'm just going to keep going. I went to therapy, and I went to a guy. There are different, obviously, schools of therapy and the therapeutic process and different approaches. This guy was a butt kicker, and I loved it. I needed it because I was dealing with depression and anxiety, and I showed up at his office, and he's like, "What's wrong?" And I just pour out my heart and all my grievances against the universe, because why am I so not normal? Why can't I just be, non-anxious? Why can't I just be as dumb as rocks and not have all these possibilities spinning around in my head and blah, 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 blah. And he sits back, he's taking notes for a while, and he sits back and he's like, "Oh, so you have to be special even in your illness." And there was this just massive silence as I went, I guess that's true. Yes. And thus began my learning about this false self that I'd been creating for the sake of feeling important and special. And these are ways, so it doesn't always look like this, but these are ways that entitlement can kind of play out, taking advantage of others because others are there to serve the narcissist, lack of empathy for others because the only internal world you're really interested in is your own, and others are really an extension of you, being envious of others, like we've talked about. This one gets me, and I see this a lot in churches and in me. There are two sets of rules. There's the set of rules for me as the senior leader, and then there's a set of rules for everybody else. Or there's the set of rules for me as the, Christian celebrity, and then there's a set of rules for everybody else. And my wife calls me on this every time. It's even true in parking. I consider it a source of pride to invent parking spaces that won't get ticketed. And my wife's just like, "Why can't you just park like everybody else?" And I'm like, "That's because I'm not a common person or something. I don't even know. It's so dumb." Number 4. The entitlement will also, before we get to number 4, the entitlement thing will often lead leaders to put their own needs before the needs of the organization that they lead. Instead of emulating Jesus, who laid his life down for his sheep, who served his followers, narcissistic leaders very often see their followers as serving them and serving their platforms, their agendas, their ministries. Number four, the immense need for continual feedback on how important the narcissist is. So again, it's immense need for continual feedback. Again, nothing wrong with wanting feedback, but these qualifiers, it's immense need for conditional feedback or the compulsive need for attention and recognition. That has been true, particularly of me when I was younger. I considered it to be playful, but I was constantly interrupting things or cracking jokes or whatever, and I didn't realize that was all a constant need for attention. And some would say that's still true. The number 5, the feeling of superiority and its reinforcement from others. This goes into the entitlement thing. Narcissists believe that they are somehow unique in their status, and they have this grandiose sense of importance. I remember, again, in another Kenton story, I believed I think I was 29, so that was a couple of years ago, I had believed that I could do anything. Like literally give me any problem in the church and I could do it. I could solve it. I could figure it out. And Kenton would always say to me in meetings, he's like, you can't make pigs fly. You can't make pigs fly. I don't know why he chose that metaphor. Maybe I was a Midwestern boy or whatever. But I remember telling him, no, specifically, I can do that. I can make pigs fly. And I've actually chosen jobs that I knew were going to be brutally difficult because I overestimated my abilities to teach my way into things, or I overestimated my ability to take criticism or whatever. So it was this grandiose sense of importance. And, when Kenton would say, hey man, you can't make pigs fly. I mean, that was actually a really important thing for me to learn. I didn't see it then. But you in the midst of your false persona, you don't want to admit weakness. And so, man, I so see now, looking back, how many times I was doing things or seeking things from people that were just reinforcing my perceived sense of specialness, uniqueness, superiority, whatever. Number 6, strong reaction to rejection and disapproval, sometimes with intense rage. And so, we've already talked about that. And it's not surprising, right? Rejection and disapproval leads to shame. At least it does in me. Shame puts me in touch with my inadequacy, my woundedness, and it pokes holes through the false persona. And so I desperately want to defend that sucker like crazy. Number 7, narcissists lack the capacity to mourn, which, according to this one author, is a defense against depression. I don't understand that as much, but the lack of capacity to mourn, I really resonate with that. I remember I was in 3rd grade. My parents told me they were getting a divorce, and I wept for maybe 2 or 3 minutes, and then I went back down and continued to play with my toys. I skated over it. I remember when my dad died in 2007, and I just couldn't find weeping. I just couldn't get there of all the things. I mean, I used to think I was very, very emotional. And I do, but I can't get in touch with crying, like as much as I think I should. And so I was like, oh, well, that's interesting. And I don't know. Again, I don't know anything that sits behind it. I just know, oh, that resonated. Number 8, calculating and conniving behavior in order to maintain supplies of continuous adulation. Oh, that's horrible. Symptoms related to this one: the constant need to be the center of attention, the diminishment of others' accomplishments, jealousy about when others are getting attention or, having success. The fragile state of the narcissist ego, this is written by somebody, is deeply dependent upon constant reinforcement and approval from others. Narcissists will look continuously to secure, quote, narcissistic supplies, which are sources of feedback that reinforce their false image. Such individuals have an extreme need to gain esteem through status, attention, admiration. Because of this need, they carefully protect the position or status through which this narcissistic supply is achieved. Because of an inability to trust others, they conclude that this can only be done by the exercise of power and control and the maintenance of their false persona. Number 9, an impaired capacity for commitment. Number 10, no capacity for self-focus or self-examination. So the question I was wondering is, would a narcissist read about the signs of narcissism? And I don't know, but I did, so I don't know where that puts me. I thought this was super interesting. Number 11. This one really struck me. Narcissists cannot function well in godly peer relationships. They always need to be in hierarchy. They always need to be under somebody or over somebody and aware of all of the rules that go with that. They always need to be one up or one down. They cannot function in peer relationships where they're not special, significant, admired, whatever. I was like, ooh, that's interesting. Narcissists are often leaders that want the perks of ministry without the pain of ministry. Narcissistic leaders look for close relationships with those who pander to them and avoid those who confront them. Narcissists can use people for their own ends, view them as objects to use for their own advantage. Narcissists rarely give in to other people's ideas or receive criticism well. So I was like, oh my goodness, this not only sounds like the person I look at in the mirror, but I wonder if this is a thing that sits behind a lot of the clergy abuses that we're seeing these days, or the moral failures, or the what. And it seems like, so I don't know. I wanted to go through this list and say, yes, man, many of these, embarrassingly, I'm like, yeah, I think they're true. And God's done a really interesting thing over the last several years with my false persona. My false persona, if it were up to me, is a guy that's totally ripped. He has long hair, like in a cool way, totally athletic, doesn't care about what anyone thinks. You know, my false persona would be super intelligent, but in that kind of like, you never need to show it off kind of way. Very witty, but never show offy, doesn't need anything, isn't insecure. I mean, it's all this, that would be my ideal false persona. The real false persona. So I even have a false persona. My real false persona, is totally gregarious, winsome, life of the party, adventurous, takes risks, blah, 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 blah. And it's so funny. God has dismantled every piece of this over the course of years. And as my wife and I talk about it, I mean, that's a very severe and gracious mercy, so instead of being skinny, I am hefty, and embarrassed completely by it. Hate, being bald is kind of that's okay. It's not super bad, but I would rather have hair. Having a little boy with special needs, and the transition from kind of the family you dream of to the family you've got, and the death of whatever you were used to dream about. I wasn't even conscious of that until we had Seth, and I was realized, why am I grieving so much? And how other families will look at you, and it's tough sometimes to have other family relationships because Seth is just tough. We've got to watch him all the time. So we've lost relationships over this, and the depression, the anxiety. I mean, just the absolute powerlessness that I felt at times to control my own brain. And then to the shame, of people saying, hey man, if you just prayed more, if you just, you're worried now, what happens if something really bad happened? Going to a therapist's office, laying on a couch, talking about my feelings, all of these things were super, super humbling. Going to Ohio, hurting the church plant, by leaving so abruptly. And I think, quite honestly, there was a part of me that hoped that moving to Ohio would help the anxiety and the depression. Looking back on it, I'm like, yeah, I thought my mom was really sick. I thought that my health needed a change of a venue. And I just think there was a lot of fear in that. And so I'm sitting here, and again, I know you don't care particularly, but it's just been so interesting because I go to this little small group on Monday nights, and it was so freaking hard not to tell people what a big deal I am. Or to show off how much I know about the Bible. I mean, it's so freaking lame. I can't even stand it about just how ridiculous. I mean, I would have to discipline myself to be quiet. Who has to do that? So anyway, this is, I don't know if this is wise or not, but I felt like as I was thinking and praying last week, because I need to mention that I was thinking and praying, I was thinking about that article and how much it bothered me. And then I was like, oh man. So the hope is twofold. One, I think this is something that's really rampant and rewarded in America and in American evangelicalism. And I think we just need to start calling out the whole platform building thing. It's toxic. But I also think for me, there's just some confession, that one of the ways to war against the false persona is the continual reintroduction of my weak, frail, dark self without trying to diminish it or nuance it or make it pretty. And I just say, no, man, this stuff is part of me. I hate it. And I want it to be different. I want it to be better. And by God's grace, I've seen some growth. Absolutely. Circumstances have conspired to reveal the depths to which this runs. But, there's also just a deep desire to become the kind of person that would act and serve like Jesus, who, his whole ministry was based on, and certainly his definitions of leadership on, listen, if you're going to be the greatest, you must be the servant of all. And how little I think I try to embody that or have embodied that, not even tried, but just have it. And so anyway, my brothers and sisters, what I want to do next time is talk about why does vocational Christian church ministry, as at least understood in American Western evangelicalism, why does this foster this sort of leadership? Why have we embraced it? Why have we permitted it? And I think there's some really good stuff that we'll cover. But anyway, this was just, I could not get into that without at least acknowledging my contribution to the mess in which we find ourselves. So my brothers and sisters, thanks for tuning in. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord shine his face upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance to you, and may he give you peace in these days. Thank you so much, brothers and sisters. Until next time.
Hey, thanks for listening to the Vox Podcast. Learn more about us at voxpodcast.com. Follow us on Twitter at the Vox Podcast, and now support us on Patreon at patreon.com/voxpodcast.